So anyway, let's go back to the iris material. Let's pull in the UV. Right now it's something like this, and the center of the UV space, I mean the 0, 0 coordinate, is somewhere around here. I want to move the center to here. So that's actually very simple. You can just create a vector math node and use subtract 0.5 and 0.5. There we go. So you see the center of the UV space is now here, right here. And that's good. Now, this is a normal texture coordinate. For the eye texture, we need an angular texture coordinate. So we need to convert this texture coordinate into a angular texture coordinate. And to do that, first create a gradient texture. There we go. And we will use radial. So now we have the angular values right here. And next we need the distance from the points being rendered to the center of the eye. So to do that, we can simply use another vector math node and change this to length operation and connect this one in like so. So in here we have 0 and here we have 0.5. Okay. Another way you can do this is to use another gradient texture, and let's use sphere or quadric sphere, and it's a reversed gradient, but that's all right. We can just invert this using a math node, subtract 1 like so. However, this quadric sphere is a little bit different from this length node. If you want something exactly the same as this length node, you can use the sphere gradient. So you see, I mean this. So you see it's exactly the same. And we need to prepare the length a bit more because I want right here to be 0 and right here to be 1. All right. So it's going to be a 0 to 1 gradient from here to here, like so. So to do that, I will drop in a map range node like so, and I'm gonna bring the from mean value up a bit, and it's a bit too much, so I'm gonna lower this to something like 0.95. Nah, 0.095, not 0.95. It's still too much, so let's try 1. Nah, okay, about that. And now I'm gonna change the from max value, something like that. And in order to properly see the 0 to 1 range, I'm gonna temporarily change the color management to standard. There we go. So you see, we can now kind of see the very edge between the below 1 and above 1, like so. So I'm gonna just tweak this until I have exactly 1 at the edge of the iris, like so. So this will be our angular texture coordinate, and let's test it out by combining the x and y dimension and then use this to generate a texture. So create a Voronoi texture and connect it in like this. So you see the texture is wrapping around the pupil, but now we have a problem. You see this nasty little seam right here? This is ugly as hell. It's nasty, and we need to get rid of that. So in a sense, we need the texture to wrap around the pupil, and the texture should also be seamless. So we need to carry out some more math operations to turn this texture coordinate into a seamless one. So create a math node and choose multiply. We're going to multiply this gradient texture with 2 pi. So 2 times pi. There we go. And then we calculate the sine of this value as well as the cosine value. There we go. We should have something like this. And now we can combine the x, y, z dimension like this and connect this into the Voronoi texture and see how it looks. So you see the Voronoi is now wrapping around the pupil, and it's also seamless. You can also add a vector math node and multiply it with a certain number in order to stretch the texture coordinate. However, you should multiply the x and y with the exact same value, okay? For example, 2, 3, 4, let's try 10. So you see it's wrapping around the pupil and it's also seamless. And let's decrease this to something like 0.2. So you see it's stretching the material, the texture. So anyway, let's just get rid of this vector math node and we will deal with the stretching of the texture later. So the idea behind the texture is that it has 3 layers, okay? The lowest layer, like this is the iris, the pupil. This is the pupil, like this, all right? And the inside layer is just normal, it's just a single color layer. But the second and the third layer will have holes in them, like this. And you can look through the holes of the layers in order to see the layers below. And also, the upper layers should cast a shadow onto the lower layers, okay? So that's the idea. So we're going to be using the Voronoi texture to create the holes of the layers. So you see, this is actually a bunch of holes, right? So let's go ahead and create the top layer. So create a math node, math, there we go, and power this by 2 to increase the contrast, like that. And create a map range node, and just lower the from max value to something like 0.42. There we go. And next, let's create a color ramp node and connect this map range node in here. This is the distance from the pupil, right? And let's create 2 more keys and place them around here, okay? And change the black key on the left to white, and this one should be black. This one is something gray, like so, and also change this to B-spline, so we have a very smooth transition, like so. And create a combine XYZ node and combine these together, like that, okay? It should be something like this. And now, create a gradient texture, choose spherical, there we go. So we have something like this, okay? This will be the base to create the holes. So let me just move everything back a bit. Okay, now we can use this to create the hole mask as well as the shadow for the top layer. So I'm going to create a color ramp, the map range node. And for this node, let's set this to 0.3, 0.35, 1, and 0, something like this, okay? So this is the hole mask for the top layer. Next, let's create the shadow mask. This will be 0.3, this will be 0.6. Okay, so this is the shadow mask. And now create a RGB curve node. And this will be the color of the eye. So I'm going to change this to something like blue. And I'm going to lower the brightness of the blue a bit, like so. And I'm going to use this as the mask to control where to lower the brightness, like that, okay? And next, create a mix RGB node and connect in the first map range node, okay? So this will be the color 1, and the color 2 should be the color of the top layer. So for now, let's choose red. So you see the red layer is casting a shadow onto the blue layer. Now it's time to start stretching the texture. I want the texture to kind of stretch toward the center, but in here there should be less stretch than, let's say, out here, okay? And to do that, we will use a power node, like that, and we will connect this map range node into the power node, and we will replace this with the z-axis with this value, okay? So you see it's starting to have an effect, but this is not what I want. For the stretching, let's use something in between 0 and 1. And the closer it is to 0, the more it will stretch towards the center, you see. out here we have like a lot of stretching, but in here we don't have a lot of stretching, right? So let me just increase the scale of the Voronoi to let you see how it looks. There we go. So let's just decrease this some more to something to very close to 0. So you see it's starting to look like the eye texture, right? But right now this number is very hard to control, right? So we need to reconfigure this a little bit to make it easier to control. So create a value node, okay? This value should be ranging from 0 to 1. So let's set this to 1 for now. 1 is maximum stretching, okay? And let's duplicate this and change this to square root. There we go. And a map range node, map 0 to 1 to a range of 1 to 75. And finally, we will divide 1 by this number, okay? And put this into the exponent input of the power node, okay? So at 1, we have maximum stretching, and at 0, we have no stretching whatsoever. So you see, let's increase this to 1. You see, it's a lot easier to control. Okay, that's pretty much it for the first layer. Let's go ahead and create the second layer. So let's go ahead and select from this Voronoi to this mix node, and Control-Shift-D to duplicate everything, move them down here. This bunch up here is the first layer, and this bunch down here is the second layer, okay? So we need to modify this a bit to make the second layer, okay? First, let's increase the size a bit, the scale a bit. Let's go ahead and change this a bit. This will be linear and move this around here. All right, let's see. Now you can actually control this key, move it up and down like this to control the clearance around the pupil, like so. So you see I'm changing the position of the key to kind of control the clearance around the pupil. And I can change the middle key to control the shift of the holes, like that. So you can just change this however you want. But for me, I'll just leave it as something like this, okay? So this is the first layer and this is the second layer. And let me just bring this up here a bit. And I'm gonna connect this to the color of the first layer. There we go. And I'm gonna change this to something else and visualize it. So you see, the first layer is orange, the second layer is green, and you see the lowest layer is blue, which is this color, okay? But I don't want to control the 3 colors for the 3 layers. I want a single color to control all the colors of all 3 layers. So I'm gonna create a RGB node. There we go. And I'm gonna copy this color over here. And this color will be the color of the highest layer. It should be here. Now, the second layer should have a slightly darker color. So create a hue saturation value node and connect the color in like so, and connect this to the color of the second layer. For this layer, let's set the saturation to 1.1 and the value to 0.7. There we go. So it's a bit darker than the top layer, okay? And the lowest layer should be also darker than the 2 layers above. So for this one, I will set the saturation to 1.2 and value to 0.4. There we go. So now we have a nice color map for the eye texture. All right, let's go ahead and connect this color to the material, the shader. There we go. And we will increase the metallic to 1 and also increase the specular to 1 and decrease the roughness. There we go. And shade smooth. You see, it looks pretty nice. And we can go back here to change the color, make it brighter. You see, it's starting to look nice. And let's see how it looks with the outside layer, the coating. So it's starting to look like an eyeball, right?